Because, man, I hate being hard times, Pinocchio. I hate struggling. At least technical struggles. Political struggles I can get with. I hate messing with these computers and whatnot, so on and so forth. But anyway, um, I went to, I got a chance to, even though that wasn't my plan, I got a chance to be with my grandmother on her 88th birthday. She's doing well. She did have some health complications, but, you know, she bounced back. And she raised me and my siblings, so, you know, she will, I mean, even without that, your grandmother should holds a special place in your heart, but she holds an exceptionally special place in my heart. So shout out to Grandma Sonetta. Shout out to Uncle Chris. And this is another thing, you know, my Uncle Chris, he used to be one of the first people I would engage in debates with, you know, and he was more of a conservative. And I remember when I told him I was a socialist, and we had very, very enlightening debates, and he helped me to reinforce, even though he didn't agree with a lot of my points of views, he helped me to really develop and reinforce and make sure before I made a pronouncement about who I was and what I understood or what I believed, that was thoroughly researched in it. Because I'd say, I'm a socialist, and Uncle Chris say, what the hell is a socialist? What do you know about socialism? And I say I'm a vegan, say I'm a revolutionary, I'm a Pan-Africanist, I'm a Garveyite. Uncle Chris, whether he agreed with what my pronouncement or not, he would always question and challenge me. So it's good to see your people. And another thing, actually, while I was in Kansas City, I had an opportunity to interact with two black police officers who are my family members. And I have half my damn family is either a cop or works in some way for the Kansas City Police Department. I don't know if I've ever shared that. And they listen to my show, and they sometimes say to me, why you talk about all cops like that? You know damn well, you know, all cops ain't bad. And I have to regrettably tell my beloved relatives and family members that, yeah, all cops are bad. And it's nothing personal. You know, it's about the institution. There's no such thing as a good person in a bad institution. Because institutions were developed and founded for the specific purpose of preventing themselves from being vulnerable to individual whims, beliefs, and standards. The whole reason that people establish institutions is so that they can maintain a specific agenda, a specific tone, and hold to a specific mission to set up and support a status quo. That's the whole, so that when new people come with their divergent ideas, their different perspective, that the institution itself will not every week or every month change. The core value of an institution is consistency. It's consistency. That's why there's no such thing as truly a revolutionary institution. Because revolution is about changing something, it's about turning, it's about flipping, it's about overthrowing, it's about bringing about something new. And if you study revolutions, you'll find that most revolutionaries, after the revolution is done, the revolutionaries become the conservatives. You look at Mao, you look at Lenin, you look at even Fidel Castro. When Fidel Castro overthrew Batista, when Fidel Castro retook the little island of Cuba, you'll find that his administration could be classified as, on the island, the conservative status quo. And there were some people who were more radical than Fidel, and there were people to the right and left of Fidel, and you'll find that Fidel went about suppressing his opponents on the right and left. And even though he would call it the revolutionary government and the revolutionary state, the revolution was won. The revolution was over. So it was a socialist state. It was no longer revolution. The revolution is when you went from a free market capitalist state to a socialist state. That was the revolution. And once the socialist state was established, revolution was done. Same thing in China. You know, they call the Revolutionary Army, or Iran. Look, Iran's a better example. They have the Revolutionary Guard in Iran. After the Shah was overthrown, after the monarchy was overthrown, the U.S. overthrew the democracy and established a monarchy. And then the Islamicists overthrew the monarchy and established a theocracy. So there was a theocratic revolution. And now that's the standard. So if you had another revolution, you have to overthrow the theocracy. See what I mean? So anyway, that's why you don't have revolutionary institutions, even though a lot of established powers, especially left-wing states, like to claim that they're revolutionary. They are not. After the Pan-African Global Revolution, and we returned to Africa to reclaim our land, to kick out the colonists, to re-educate or eliminate the Uncle Tom sellouts. After we did all that and we established the governments, we established an economy, we take control of the means of production, we set up an army, a defensive structures, we can no longer call ourselves the revolutionaries. We are the governors. We are the bureaucrats. You know, we are the statesmen. But we can no longer call ourselves revolutionary, even though that's where we came from. That's how we came to power, through revolution. But you can't govern through revolution. And a lot of people don't understand that. And that's why a lot of revolutions through revolution. And a lot of people don't understand that. And that's why a lot of revolutions fail, because they have a lot of trouble making the transition from revolution to statecraft, to management of the state apparatus. But anyway, that's why there's no such thing as good cops. Because the institution of policing was established way back in the Roman Empire, really. But even if you don't want to go back that far, you just come to the United States. In the United States, before they had formal policing, they would just round up a posse of citizens. And if there was a problem, they call out the men in the community, and every man was armed, and they said, we have this problem. And they said that we need a professional police force. And let's tax the people to pay some people to deal with policing all times. And the policemen don't enforce laws, they sustain the status quo. The laws are a guideline, but they are not what is, because the larger, what the guidelines do are to give legitimacy to the status quo. But ultimately, if a law is inconsistent with the status quo, the law will be ignored. Just ask Trump. So I had to explain to my relatives who are cops. Well, not that trip. This trip, we didn't get into it, but I've had to in the past, when they will come on the air and say, you know, I'm a good man. You know, I'm a good person. You know, I ain't never, killed anybody. I ain't never abused my own people. You know, in fact, when there's a racist cop doing something, I step in to help my people. And I'm like, yeah, you're a good person, but you're not a good cop. You can't, there's no such thing as a good cop anywhere in the world because of the institution. I worked in healthcare for over a decade. And I couldn't be a good technologist because the institution of healthcare being racist, profit-driven, discriminatory, sexist, I said profit-driven, capitalistic, hierarchical, because of the institution of healthcare in the United States, the way it is structured and sustained, and its governing bodies like the AMA or state government. There's no such thing. I try to do good. I try to say, hey, I'm going to be the change I wish to see in the world. Which is the Dalai Lama. Don't get me started on the Dalai Lama. And by the way, there's like a whole, in the Buddhist monasteries and the Buddhist hierarchy of the Buddhist religion or Buddhist lifestyle, whatever you Buddhists want to say, they have a sex scandal that is as big, if not bigger, than the Catholic Church of exploitation, child sex trafficking and molestation and the whole nine. And the Dalai Lama is right at the top of that degenerate pyramid. So I just love when the Buddhists try to front like they are somehow more enlightened than the Abrahamic believers. But I digress. I worked at Rikers Island for a few years, right out of school, because nobody wanted to work in a prison infirmary. So when I graduated, that's the first place I went because it was a job that was relatively easy to get. It paid very well. And I said, well, if I'm going to be working at Rikers Island, if I'm going to be working at a prison, I'm going to make a difference. I'm going to be a good prison worker. Well, I didn't really even work for the state. I actually worked for Albert Einstein Medical Center. We were a contract clinic, but still, I was part of the machine. And I did everything I could to advocate for the inmates, to expose the corruption, and all of it was for naught. As Immortal Technique said, you're part of the machine, man. I was part of the machine. And I could go around and say, not all healthcare workers in prison infirmary are bad. That's irrelevant. That's irrelevant. If I'm making a positive contribution to the status quo, if I am, number one, contributing to and extracting from the status quo, then I am culpable. That's why, white folks understand this. They like to pretend that they forgot about it. But if you look at the Nuremberg trial after World War II, a lot of Germans were hung who never laid a finger on a Jew, who never said an unkind word to a Jew, who never set foot in a concentration camp. Many who were hung even honestly said, I had little to no knowledge of what was going on in the concentration camp, because just like they do here with the prisons, they put the concentration camps out, and it wasn't in the middle of Berlin. In fact, the majority of the Nazi German concentration camps were in Poland, in Krakow, So they didn't put it in their backyard, just like all the filth that white capitalists do today. They don't put that stuff in their own hood. So there were many Germans who said, yo, why am I in court? I was just doing my job. And they were like, well, you set the train schedules. You were an engineer that worked on the rail lines, and you helped to facilitate the German Holocaust. You helped to facilitate it. And so we're going to kill you too. Because even though you never laid a finger on a Jew, you never said an anti-Semitic word in your life, you never committed any direct offense, you were part of the larger Nazi apparatus, the institution of the Nazi death machine. So the only way you can be innocent of that, where like Oskar Schindler, there were some Nazis that became heroes because every day they worked to subvert the very institution they work within. So if you are not a cop who is collecting intel on the corruption in your department and giving that intel to the community, to people who can use that intel to challenge the police, to subvert the police, if you're not a cop who is doing everything in your power to prevent the police from fulfilling their social, cultural, historical, and political role in communities and in society, if you are not a true spook who is sitting by the door, then you're not good, even if you don't commit police brutality. In fact, good cops help give legitimacy and cover to the bad cops. If it wasn't for you so-called self-professed good cops, there would have long been a revolution to overthrow the police. But because you cops getting kittens out of trees and pulling cars out of ditches allow for the genocidal corrupt cops to do their work. So you are a valuable asset to the corrupt cops. But not to say all that, I enjoy seeing my Uncle Chris, and I won't be back there till the spring. So if he's listening, we can, I'm just saying, it just had me thinking about that all week when I meet good people that I know personally that are good, that are participating. It ain't just, I got Muslims and Christians in my family. And they hate, you want to talk about, you've been to the masjid. We raised you in the church. And then you say all those horrible things about the church. And I'm like, you're damn straight. I say all those horrible things about the church. And I will continue to say all those horrible things about the church. And there's no such thing as a good Christian, as a good Muslim. The only way you can be truly a good Christian and a good Muslim is if you're a bad Christian or a bad Muslim. Which means if you deviate from the dictates of your dogma. If you are a bad Christian, meaning that you don't fully adhere to the madness that is in the Bible, that is in the Quran, that is in the Torah, if you reject most of it, because let me tell you, if you were truly a Christian and you adhere to everything in the Bible, you'd be in prison, on death row, or in an insane asylum. The things that are in the Bible are the things that are not explicitly prohibited in the Bible, such as marrying and having sex with children, such as killing children, killing neighbors, killing other people from foreign lands, committing murder, wanton murder, mutilation, and rape are all okay and allowed in the Bible. So, the only way to be a good Christian is to violate much of what Christianity mandates. The only way to be a good Jew is to violate much of what is written in the Torah. The only way to be a good Muslim is to ignore or try to rework in your own head what is written in the Hadith or the Quran. So the only way to be a good Muslim Christian Jew is to be a bad Muslim Christian Jew. You can't be out here killing infidels, and some people, and the people who do keep it real, the people who do truly try to be fundamentalists, everybody hates fundamentalists. The people who try to follow every letter of the written word, I don't care if it's an Orthodox Jew or a fundamentalist Wahhabist Muslim or a fundamentalist American fascist Christian. Everybody hates the fundamentalists because they adhere blindly to what's in the book. So the best people we know, the people that are real, oh, I love my God, but you know, I'm cool. I'm not stoning homosexuals. I'm not going to kill my child if he mobs back to me. I'm not going to take a rod and beat my wife. You know, I kind of gloss over that. But you know, the whole treat your fellow man right. You know, I go to the mosque, I bump my head on the floor. I go to the tabernacle and I do the Holy Ghost chicken dance. And that's it. You know, I don't get crazy with it. So there's no such thing as good cops, good Christians. The only way to be good on a collective scale is to make sure your institution is fundamentally just. Not by taking the unjust elements of your institution or your belief system and trying to bury it in a corner. That's a bad Christian. Those are bad feminists. Those are bad cops. Those are bad capitalists. Now, when you create a just institution, or as Marimba Ani in Yurugu talks about the asili, the cultural germ seed. If your germ seed, if the fundamental purpose, the fundamental drivers, the fundamental seed of what you're doing is corrupt, then it doesn't matter whether you have good people there or bad people. But the inverse is also true. If the fundamental seed of what you're doing is just, if the fundamental purpose and drive is just, then you will have bad people, corrupt people, low down, scurly-wop scumbags who emerge from that. But their evil will be greatly attenuated. That's why when Europeans came to America and they saw the Iroquois Confederacy, they saw that the Native Americans had governments, they had cities, they had laws, they had protocols that lasted 20, 30, 40, 50,000 years. The mound builders, the Lakota Nation, they had government. And the Lakota said, white man, you just came from a horrible, horrible place. You wouldn't be here if where you were wasn't a horrible place. You're malnourished, you got scurvy, you got syphilis, you got smallpox, you all messed up in the game. You stink and you're dirty and you've got rat-infested ships. But I tell you what, white man, here's some land. Here's all the resources you need. Here's education, free education on how to work the land and live off the land. We will allow you to integrate into our society. And you could either join one of the tribes, get initiated into one of the tribes, or nations. They weren't tribes, they were actually nations. Of the Iroquois Confederacy, here are very stated laws. All men are created equal. If you look at the U.S. Constitution, it's plagiarized from the Iroquois Confederacy. And the white man who was escaping starvation, theft, rape, a tyrannical, mad, inbred kings could have came here and just chill. They literally said they were right about the paradise. There's no greed. There's no lack. All of the stuff. But the problem with the Europeans was they couldn't get their rocks off. They couldn't engage in institutional corruption. So the European colonizers, the European settlers went back and told their king, come over here, and the very thing that white people were escaping, they brought here. Because they knew they couldn't get jiggy with the Iroquois Confederacy. Well, how will I rise in the rank and make these people work for me and make them? Like in Europe, I was a peasant. But in the New World, I could be a king. But your king was corrupt. The king created suffering. You understand yourself the amount of suffering that kings impose. Why would you want to recreate what you were trying to escape? So that's the problem. But Europeans understood we couldn't integrate into the Iroquois Confederacy. We couldn't work hard and elevate within the Iroquois Confederacy. We can't have white elders. They didn't try to integrate. They didn't march and sing "We Shall Overcome" and keep their eyes on the prize. And one day, the white man, the white settler, would be equal to the red man. They were like, we got to tear down their institutions and resurrect our institutions. Same thing they did in Africa. Same thing they did in Australia. Africans told them that made them the same offer. The Aboriginals, the Pacific Islanders, just about everywhere he went except for Asia. I mean, the Japanese were like, I'm going to put this samurai sword up your ass if you come on my land talking Jesus, Muhammad. And that's why Japan, even though it got nuked twice and it nuked itself a third and fourth time, so really Japan has been nuked like 4 times. They haven't been colonized. And if anything, the white man had to say to the Japanese, hey, come be my partner in global conquest. You know, because they didn't play that. They didn't play that integrationist game. So, but the old adage, if you can't beat them, join them. But joining your enemy is also a defeat. So beating your enemy, if you can't beat them, you lose to them, because joining them is also a defeatist position. But I digress. Said all that to say, I really enjoyed, even though it wasn't a planned trip, I really enjoyed my time in Kansas City. Shout out to my family and relatives there, and I look forward to returning there when I get a chance. And I'm sorry that Wednesday I wasn't here. Moving on. Pipe bombs. There was some rap. Oh, first I gotta say this. Free my man Ice-T. They arrested Ice-T. I'm sure he's out of jail by now. Ice-T was speeding in his McLaren. So free Ice-T. Hashtag us old school cats. You know, all these young people always got their rappers get locked up. Their rappers get thrown under the jail all the time. But now, one of ours got locked up. So anyway, free Ice-T. People get mad at me for like, how dare you be an Ice-T fan? Look, I'm talking about Ice-T from 1983. If you go listen to Ice-T's old rap, he's rapping about Reagan. Reagan puts guns where they don't belong. Let me tell you something about you young rappers today. Don't reference presidents in your rhymes, because that will severely date your stuff. Don't reference presidents. Don't do it. Just don't. You know, KRS-One talking about Jimmy Carter. I'm just saying. But I go listen to. So I'm talking about Ice-T when he was going up against the Reagan administration. Okay? Then this new, I ain't seen none of Ice-T's TV stuff. I ain't seen his reality show. I heard about it. I don't watch none of those crime dramas. I've never watched them. So my Ice-T ain't your Ice-T. So you can keep that Ice-T. I'm talking about permed out, you know, now later Gator Ice-T from Los Angeles. But actually, another tidbit, just like Tupac, Ice-T was actually born in New York. So even West Coast hip hop pioneers, East Coast gave birth to the West Coast hip hop. All that under the bridge. I just had to go through that formality. Free Ice-T. I'm sure he's out already. So this is a bit late, but I don't have a daily show. So sometimes I gotta say stuff. It's like an echo from back in the day. Free Ice-T. Pipe bombs. I don't even want to talk about this because what did Grandma Bowie tell us? Stay up out of white folks' business and tend to your own. That's what my great grandmother told me. Stay out of white folks' business and tend to your own. And that's how she survived the Great Depression. She came up, my great grandmother came up in Jim Crow, Great Depression. And like I said, even though Grandma Bowie and Grandpa Bowie, if you had called them an African, they would feel that you were insulted them. They were some of the most Afrocentric, culturally conscious black people I've ever interacted with. And you know, in terms of being socialistic, communal, pro-black, and even black separatist. You would have told, if you asked my grandma Boy, she said, Jesus said, love everybody. I love everybody. I don't see colors. But she wanted no part. She lived in amongst black people, worked for black people. All of her service provider, from the guy who sold her toaster to the guy who worked on my grandpa's lawnmower, all black. They lived in extremely black segregated existence. So they were more of a separatist than Farrakhan. But they didn't, it wasn't politicized. It was just life. They just lived. They didn't talk it because they lived it. As Puff Daddy is fine. I ain't got to talk it because I live it. But anyway, she told us to stay out of white folks' business and tend to our own. Dick Gregory, the now ancestor Dick Gregory said, when white folks built nuclear bombs, they didn't build them for us. They wasn't true. They knew they didn't need bombs. They took us down with muskets. They took us down with muskets and cannons. They know damn well they didn't need nuclear bombs. They built nuclear bombs to aim at other white people. And when we saw the white man making the nuclear bomb and running off with the nuclear bomb, we should have said, okay, see you later, white man. I'll see you when you get back. Wherever you're going, that's you. But we jumped in there like, where you going? The white man said, I'm fighting the communists. And we said, what's a communist, boss? I don't like it. It don't sound right. We love freedom and we love capitalism. We got all entangled in white folks' business. And black people then went off to amongst ourselves and said, I'm a capitalist, I'm a communist, and beating each other over the head over white ideology and white folks' business. So white people, that's another thing. We had this myth of white unity. And we had a whole class of black people who were supposed to be conscious that would tell us constantly, black people suffer because we don't stick together. We don't have unity, and that's why we don't have power. Black people, we don't stick together. And would suggest this false causality that unity equals power, strength, and money. But then that would give us the impression that white people have power and money, therefore they must be unified. And ignoring all of the guns, bombs, and hatred and vitriol that white people have amongst themselves and between themselves. So then we could at least, after over a century of seeing that white people don't get along with each other, they don't love each other, they sell each other out and betray each other at every opportunity. There's so much internal hostility. Even the report came out, the leader of the alt-right beats the hell out of his wife. He ain't even unified within his own home. So obviously, white unity is not the reason, is not the source of white power. And if you read The Iceman's Inheritance, if you read, I'm going to get back to that, you'll find that even white people say, yeah, that's a trick. We lied. Remember what we told y'all about the Protestant work ethic, working hard, sacrificing, saving, loving thy neighbor as being a source of wealth and prosperity? Oh, that was all a lie. Now we got some white anthropologists and white researchers that was like, yeah, that ain't why we got money. But I digress. We had people telling us we don't stick together and that's why we suffer. That's why they're shooting unarmed black children in the street, because we're not unified. Well, our lack of unity precludes us from having a sustained resistance, but it does not provoke or cause our oppression, poverty, discrimination, or genocide. That's not what causes it. It could be the part of the solution, but again, that false causality. Just because something is necessary for a solution does not mean it's the cause of the problem. Or inverse flip and switch that. However you want to state it. I'm telling y'all, this revolution stuff, it is an intellectual endeavor. Most people think if they have a strong enough feeling, a strong enough desire for freedom, then that will guide everything there. Your strong desire for freedom could provoke actions that more entrench you in oppression. But anyway, I would prefer to ignore this pipe bomb story. Put my feet up and fall back. And some of y'all might say, what are you talking about? That's white folks' business. They sent a pipe bomb to Barack Obama. Let me tell you something. But Barack Obama is like I tend to white folks' business. Barack Obama is white folks' business. Barack Obama was elected, and his sole mission was preserving the American democracy. And if he had to sell all of us down the river, he would do it. And he did it. Barack Obama gave trillions of dollars to the banks. Barack Obama absolutely refused to hold any of the fraudulent bankers, fraudulent brokers, fraudulent capitalists accountable. Not one person went to jail. Damn Ronald Reagan, the Republican Ronald Reagan, incarcerated more people under federal corruption crimes, especially with the SNL scandal, than all Democrats from Carter, Clinton, and Reagan and Clinton and Obama. I'm sorry, not Reagan, Obama. So in a legal, in a justice, criminal justice sense, Ronald Reagan was more progressive than Obama. Obama's only mission was to preserve the empire and to reestablish. And Obama even said George Bush, because of how he conducted himself, hurt America's standing in the world. George Bush hurt our standing in the world. And what is America's standing in the world? The empire, imperialism. So when he said George Bush hurt America's standing, he said George Bush reduced the status of the American empire, which is a good thing. If you don't like empire, if you don't like corporatism and capitalism, it's a good thing. So Obama is white folks' business. That's all I'm saying. If you look at Obama's legislative governance record and look at some of the bad things that happened under Obama, like the Occupy movement and the Black Lives Matter. Why did we have to start? The Black Lives Matter movement, wherever you think about it, and it is an evolving movement, the Black Lives Matter movement started under Obama because Obama was so neglectful. And it took us almost 8 years to figure out, oh, Obama ain't with us. So yes, when I say these pipe bombs are white on white crime, that's white folks' business, even though Auntie Maxine Waters and Barack Obama were recipients of the pipe bombs. But I'm going to try to, because everybody's going on and on about it. One thing I find that's disturbing about this pipe bomb stuff is that a lot of so-called conscious, cultural, aware, progressive, whatever you want to call it, black people have a real affinity for right-wing propaganda, which I don't understand. I don't understand right-wing propaganda being spread and shared by so-called conscious black people. Now, conscious black people, when you're in the black community and you become conscious, you find one of the most powerful forces in the community is integrationism. That is the desire, that is the ideology, that is the goal within the black community. And if you were raised in the black community in the United States, you were raised more likely than not by integrationists. And you went to church and you were preached to by integrationists. You went to school, if you, like me, and all black, some of y'all, the black people who were raised, the fraction of black people that were raised by conscious, pro-black, Afrocentric parents, and the fraction of black people that were raised with supreme Uncle Tom black people, that lived amongst white people that were Republican. I'm not talking about y'all. I'm talking about 80%, the black masses. Your ideology was integrationist. Everything about your life, your eyes on the prize, your aunties who wanted you to succeed, they would define integration as the success. All of your relatives that wanted what's best for you tried to help you to better integrate, to get you into a good white school, to get a good white job, to buy a good white house, to have a good white credit score, and get some good white money, and properly invest and spend that good white money. And even if you got a good black wife, you make sure that black wife has the same integration as good white value system, so y'all can create a black white family and have a black white life, middle class lifestyle. Integration. So when black people and integration, the integration ideology, the integration movement is controlled by black integrationists, white liberals, and the overall larger Democratic Party. In fact, in the World War II, the post-World War II era, when black people made a migration, the majority of black people, because the Republicans Party was the party of the elites. And the Republican Party was the first party to come out against chattel slavery because the elites, the economic elites, understood how economically inefficient and backwards chattel slavery was. And the economic elites wanted to impose a system of wage slavery instead of chattel slavery. But all said and done, the Republicans were the party of the abolitionists. So black people, when we became emancipated, we were all 99.99. There wasn't a black Democrat on the face of America. And then we all migrated when the New Deal reforms and the civil rights reforms became the Democrat made that part of their platform, starting with FDR and his wife, and on down the line of other LBJ and other Democratic reformists on the federal and state level. We made our mass migration from Republican to Democrat. And so now the Democrats were the party of integration. Republican was the party of emancipation. Even now, there are many Republicans, or more so libertarian right-wingers, who are more progressive on incarceration and drug laws than the average Democrat. Even now, the Republican has a lot of emancipatory, but it's a warped emancipation, because therefore deregulation overall, but I digress. So anyway, if you're a black person in the United States who comes into consciousness, the first thing you recognize is, wow, the Democrats, the liberals, the left wing, the integrationists have all the power. They control us directly. So it's natural for an awakening black person to have an aversion, to have an hostility towards liberalism, towards the Democratic Party, towards the so-called left wing of the American political structure. It makes perfect sense. I don't in any way challenge people on that. When people come and be like, the Democrats ain't nothing, the Democrats this, and these liberals, all these white liberals claim to be our friends, and these feminists claim to be the friends of the black women, and these progressives claim blah, blah, blah. I'm like, ditto, ditto, quadruple ditto, yes, but here's a flaw. This is where y'all screw up. You think, again, this false dichotomy, you think, well, if the Democrats are bad, if the right wing is bad, if the liberals are bad, if the progressives are bad and anti-black, some black people go the other side and say, well, the right wing, conservative, the right wing, Republican, the right wing media, Rush Limbaugh, Alex Jones, the right wing conspiratorial anti-government nut jobs, that must be good. Because if liberals are bad, conservatives good. Democrats bad, Republicans good. And so I see all over social media so-called conscious, awakened, progressive revolutionary black people who are very fond of and share a lot of right-wing rhetoric. And they say, well, the right wing is against abortion. And since the right wing is against abortion, they want to save black babies. The right wing are against the gays. And the liberals want to turn us all into girls. They don't want us to fight. They don't want us to thump our chest and drag our knuckles on the ground and be men. So the right wing. And the right wing, they're pro-business. They're anti-taxes. I don't want to pay any taxes to this government that oppresses me. And so the right wing is anti-taxes. And they're pro-business. And we need to build black businesses. And I'm going to tell you, if you fall for all this, you're a damn idiot. You're a damn idiot. And there's a lot of conscious idiots out there who, what I find, their consciousness, their pro-black, their revolutionary ideology is pure emotion. There's no academic foundation. White people treat me bad. I see my people suffering. I walk around my community and I see the ravages of the drug war. I see the ravages of redlining and racist economic policies, banking discrimination. I see the ravages of police brutality, and it makes me so mad. And I want to do something. Give me a picket sign. Where do I march? Give me some red, black, and green. Give me a shotgun and a leather beret. Or a leather jacket and a black beret. Give me black imagery. Give me a carving of an African mask. Give me a giant statue from Africa. Let me be anti everything that the white man is. Raw. I'm not against any of that. But one thing they don't say is, give me books so that I can study. Give me a quiet space where I can sit down and research the very nature of oppression, the history of oppression, the culture and realities of my people, where I can research revolutionaries and strategies. They don't ask for that. In fact, those are the people like, I ain't with all that talking, we need action. And so I find that people who only have an emotional, reactionary basis for their consciousness are the most likely to be sharing right-wing, so much right-wing rhetoric. And it's no different than the person who becomes conscious and they become awakened. And they were like, yeah, you know, I used to be a Christian and pray to Jesus, but now I woke up. I found myself. I found my identity. So now I'm a Muslim. It's no different. It's no different. So it's just like a political conversion. Religiously, you wake up, so you start dressing like a damn Bedouin, speaking the Arabic language, thinking Arabic is blacker or African, more African than English. You know, you think the Bible is less righteous than the Quran or more corrupt than the Quran. Politically, it's the same thing. I ain't no Democrat. Democrats don't do nothing for us. Blah, 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 blah. Democrats ain't no different than Republicans. And then you start flirting with right-wing rhetoric, right-wing policies, right-wing ideology, and you start sharing right-wing propaganda and right-wing media. And then anything that could be associated with the left, even if it's accurate, sober analysis coming from the left, you reject it outright. And you will take some of the most, crisis actors. You start talking Pizzagate. You start talking all this right-wing nonsense. And you think, hey, it's against one group of white people, but it's supporting another group of white people. And the Republicans are like, come on down. And even some of y'all say, well, I'm not a Republican. I would never wear a MAGA hat, but who cares if you're advancing or embracing their agenda? But a lot of so-called conscious black people are nothing more than black conservative Puritans. They want to create a black version of what these white alt-right. They want the Ankh-right, the man at the head of the family, the man being the ultimate law, the king of his castle, capitalist accumulation, getting massive amount of money so that I can live a good life at the expense of other people. And I don't mean a good life in terms of good food, healthy social relationship. I mean a good life in terms of charter jets to Dubai. an opulent, mass consumption, degenerate life. You know, so I'm not sure why y'all do that, but somebody's got to call it out. And I see so much of it, and people really think they dropping some black consciousness when they're doing nothing but sharing white right-wing rhetoric. But anyway, this pipe bomb thing is another thing. Black people, a lot of so-called conscious black people are just regurgitating right-wing talking points. Oh, the Democrats sent those bombs out. Yeah, it's a play. And I'm just not their MO. But now they've isolated since this morning. First, the most recent story about an hour ago came out that they pinpointed the shipping place, which is Florida. I think either Miami or Tallahassee, one of those, someplace in Florida that they pinned it to. And the thing is, the pipe, they can find the hardware store where the pipe was bought, that they can find a signature on the wire where the wire was purchased and trace the wire back to the manufacturing plant. And, you know, they're eventually going to get to the bottom of this. And all I'm saying is, if you don't listen to my grandma Bowie and just stay out of white folks' business altogether, if you're going to jump into white folks' business and begin to discuss white folks' business and disseminate white folks' business, make sure you're engaged in some critical thought and accurate analysis of white folks' business. That you're not just either taking up left-wing corporate propaganda or right-wing fascist propaganda and just picking one huddle of white people or some other huddle of white people and just spewing their rhetoric. If you're going to share a link from a right-wing Fox News or Turning Point USA, if you're going to share information from a white right-wing media, then at least give some commentary. Don't just share it, accept it at face value, and regurgitate it at face value. And just because the source is defined as quote-unquote liberal, don't reject it outright. Be intelligent, be analytical, be academic. That's all I'm saying. Now, one thing that the people are saying, where Trump is saying that the media, with all of their negative reporting, is causing the divisiveness, that the media is at fault. CNN got a pipe bomb, so the media brought this down on themselves. This is absolutely untrue. Trump calls negative reporting, or negative reporting is just Trump does a lot of negative stuff. Trump has had, over a dozen of conviction of his top aides and staff members and campaign staff have been convicted. Trump engages in a lot of negative stuff. So if you are just reporting honestly and accurately on Trump, it's going to be negative. But one thing Trump doesn't say, he says the media is lying and it's fake news. And he doesn't say, well, that's a lie and here's the truth. He has nothing to back it up. He makes absurd claims. And the thing what we don't understand about U.S. politics is that politics is mostly, in the United States, is self-regulated. There's a lot of space for self-regulation. They don't say specifically how the president can dress or can't dress, who the president does or doesn't talk to. Even when you look at the Congress, many of the rules of Congress are not written down. They're just traditions that have developed over the years. And what was understood between the political parties is, even though we're in power now, there may become a time where we won't be in power. This is a democratic system, so the power changes hands between the Democrats and the Republicans. And because we don't want the Democrats to lord their power over us or abuse their power when they're in the majority, we will regulate ourselves and not abuse our power when we're in the majority. It's mostly gentlemen's agreement back and forth. You know, it's kind of like the drug game. There's no laws governing the drug game. It's all illegal, but there are some agreements on, about how to interact, how you don't take people's territory and clientele. When you violate those agreements, then the guns come out. Well, Trump doesn't, number one, he doesn't know the self-regulatory and traditional practices of the White House or the Congress or even the Supreme Court. Trump knows nothing. And Trump's ignorance in terms of politics is currently his greatest asset. He's an idiot, a flaming, unmerciful idiot, which works for him because this is an idiocracy. This is the society, this is a post-literate society. Americans, by and large, are dumb as doorknobs. They don't know anything. Even you have a brain surgeon who doesn't have a basic understanding of anything outside of brain surgery. But that's STEM. For many years, people have been telling you academic pursuits that deal with critical thinking, philosophy, political science, history, the arts, critique, journalism. Everybody says when you get an education, it's about a job. So I need to learn a specific technical skill. And I'm not going to waste my time reading about philosophy when I'm trying to learn this very specific skill. When I'm trying to learn this very specific skill, I'm not going to debate ethics and take an ethics course. I just need to learn this specific skill that a multinational corporation is willing to pay me to use. And so you have a technocratic society. You don't have what is called a cosmopolitan society. The liberal arts have been defamed, and they come out every year with these lists on the internet, the most worthless degrees, because human understanding, human intellectual development doesn't matter. Do you have a wicked jump shot? Can you rap on the mic? Can you turn knobs and push proper buttons to create certain instruments without any long-term reflection on the social societal impacts of this activity? Are you a technocrat? Are you little more than an organic robot that can execute a command upon anticipation of receiving an economic reward? That's what it is. Right now, if not for my own personal value system, I could be making more than 6 figures in my original job that I originally went to school to train for this technical degree in. But I'm like, I can't keep doing this. It violates my code. And people are like, what is a code? Are you getting money? But he getting money. That's all that matters. So anyway, this is the new world. And because we have this, people will look at a president and say, this president will give me jobs. And if he's going to bring me a job, then I'm voting for him. And they don't care about his values, his ethics, his platform. They don't care about anything else. So Trump is the perfect president. Trump is a true, America has what is called a representative democracy. Sometimes it holds up to that. Sometimes it violates that. A representative democracy means the individual is the embodiment of the will of the people, of the values of the people, of the outlook, the worldview of the people. So when you go to Washington, D.C. to represent the people, you are a representative of their interests, their desires. And sometimes you get presidents that are not a very good reflection of the people, like Jimmy Carter, like LBJ, like FDR. But other times you get presidents that are exactly what they're supposed to be. Even Obama was not a very good representative. He was a good steward. He was a competent bureaucrat. He served the people well, but he was not a good representative. First of all, he was black. First, second, third, fourth of all, he was a bit too articulate, a little bit too poised. But Trump is one of the best representatives. Good job, white majority. Good job, white folks. I don't think they've ever elected a more representative. Trump, if all of America was condensed down into the form of a human being, it would be Donald Trump. Violent, ignorant, brutal, rich, sexually deviant, incestuous and pedophilic tendencies. I mean, You can get mad about Trump being in office all you want. Trump is a true representative of America. I don't think there's been a more, since Andrew Johnson. Since Andrew Jackson, I don't think there's been a more appropriately representative of what America is. But anyway, Trump is causing, I said this 2 years ago when he first, he didn't beat Hillary Clinton. He only won through massive voter fraud, gerrymandering. It's all broken down. And if you think Trump won, then go check out Greg, the research of Greg Palast. There's another book. I can't say the name of the book on the air. I can't even spell it, but it's called Rat, R-A-T-F blank blank or F blank blank K. And it breaks down how Republicans are actually the minority party and how they set up a sophisticated election fraud system in order to rule from the minority. There hasn't been a Republican who was justly elected, elected to office since, I think I have to say, Eisenhower. I'd have to look up that, but I think Eisenhower was probably the last Republican to walk into office without any type of fraud. I'd have to go check, but I think he was the yeah, I think that's it. I don't know, but it's been a while. Can I say that? It's been a damn dogged long ass time since the Republican, because I know y'all know Trump got in on some dirt. Y'all know Bush got in doing some dirt. Y'all know Bush's father got in on some dirt. Ronald Reagan got in on some dirt. And gone back, Nixon. So anyway, again, but a lot of black people believe a lot of white right-wing propaganda. And me saying this, I'm not saying this to be like the Democrats are good. But I am saying for black people to say Democrats are no different than the Republicans. For black people to say they're no different is intellectual laziness. Do you hear me? It's intellectual laziness. Now, white people, as much as they disregard everyone else in their drive to colonize and control the world, are very keen at not only identifying even the most minute differences between other races and cultures and within other races and cultures, they are masterful at acknowledging them. We won't even acknowledge it. So they will go and say, oh, the Yoruba have these distinct differences from the Igbo. And black people in the South of America, the Southern blacks, have these differences from Northern or Midwestern blacks. And blacks on the West Coast have these distinct differences. Or black conservatives have these distinct differences from black liberals. Black nationalists have these distinct differences from black integrationists. Now, the white people who acknowledge these differences don't say, well, I'm against the black nationalists and I support the black integrationists. They like, I'm going to rule over and enslave all these monkeys. But in order to assert my rule and to sustain my rule, I sometimes will have to look at their intricacies and manipulate them. So if you were really serious about having real opposition against the systems and institutions of global white domination, you wouldn't be so intellectually lazy or just plain stupid as to say, ain't no difference, they all just the same. That's just stupid and lazy. And how can you ever hope to challenge, manipulate, or even, dare I say, divide and conquer our oppressors if you won't even acknowledge their divisions? Are you so stupid to think to sit here and give an honest and thorough critique of Republicans means I'm a Democrat, or to criticize the Democrat means I'm a Republican? No, I'm a thinker. And I hate this discussion going into every election cycle. This is the third time for the time I've been on the air, this is my third election cycle. And every time I start to talk about the election cycle, I start to discuss local and national politics, I got a group of black people telling me, oh, you Democrat, oh, you're a Republican. Actually, politically, I'm a Pan-Africanist. And that's why I walk in, and that's the interest that I study, work, and even vote in. Yes, you can go as a Pan-Africanist and say which one of these politicians or which positions on this ballot serve my long-term, short-term, and immediate goals and agenda and interest. You ain't got to be, but anyway, I'm a registered, and generally, but I ain't going to get into that. I'm just saying, this pipe bond stuff, the story unfolds. The one thing that stands out most about me in the pipe bond is how many so-called conscious black people are taking the white side of it. But my time is getting away from me. Megyn Kelly, blonde-haired, blue-eyed white folks, I'm going to have to talk to, maybe not now, Me Too and the racism of white women. Barbecue Becky and all of that, and Me Too. But Megyn Kelly, y'all mad at Megyn Kelly talking about, Megyn Kelly is that same white woman. I don't know if she's a journalist, but she said Jesus was white and Santa Claus was white, and stopped playing games with making Jesus black and Santa Claus black and Black Santa is sacrilege. So I don't know why people are all up in arms and got they boxer draws in a bunch because she said something about blackface. But we got to talk about blackface and minstrelsy. Let me talk about this before I go to the actual topic. Farrakhan had a 4-hour meeting with R. Kelly. And Farrakhan announced at his mosque to his followers that God was not only in R. Kelly, but God was communicating through R. Kelly. And Farrakhan said, I quote, "There's no way for a man to make such beautiful music and not have God within him." And Farrakhan is going to help to cleanse R. Kelly, is going to help build up R. Kelly. Now, many people were shocked. Some people were outraged, except for his cult followers, who were just like, if Farrakhan said it, I believe it, and that's the end of it. But for the rest of us who are not caught up in the cult of personality or the cult of the Nation of Islam, we're like, wow, that's peculiar. But here's the thing. If you look at the history of Islam and pedophilia, if you can find for me in the Quran, the Holy Quran, or Muhammad's teachings in the Hadith, where pedophilia is explicitly forbidden, I'll wait. Please send me those verses. Please send them to me. So, I can fully understand how any Muslim can rationalize R. Kelly's behavior, and any Christian or Jew or Buddhist for that much. Because none of those holy belief systems are very clear on sex with children. The Bible explicitly forbids gay sex. The Bible explicitly, Leviticus says it is an abomination thereunto the Lord. And I'm like, since God is explicitly telling you which sex acts he doesn't like, he doesn't say that an adult having sex with a child is an abomination unto the Lord. But even Jesus dropped the ball on the gay stuff. He didn't even mention the gay stuff. God is just so inconsistent. So you tell me, should we really be surprised that Farrakhan would break bread with R. Kelly? And I'm pretty sure Farrakhan was like, listen, you can have many wives, you can have many women, you can have women of a very young age. You just gotta make honest women of them. You just gotta, you know, make sure they cover 3/4. Their heads are covered when they're out in public. There's a way to do this. There's a righteous way to abuse young underage girls. So I don't know. Now maybe he met with R. Kelly to organize a Million Molester March. And many of y'all dudes are gonna show up. Y'all done showed up for like 3, 4, 5 marches already. So I mean y'all fall for anything. I don't even blame Farrakhan at this point. I blame y'all who propped this dude up. It's something that I think is utterly despicable. I mean, that whole just trying to create cover and justification for R. Kelly is the most despicable thing that Farrakhan has done since he said that Malcolm was a traitor and the nation dealt with Malcolm like a nation should deal with a traitor. I didn't think he could top that level of disgust. But not only he topped it, he passed it and put a cherry on it. Let me not dwell on that because I am broadcasting out of the sanctuary of hypocrisy that is the home of the Nation of Islam. But I got to tell it. Somebody got to say it. Moving on. Today's show is titled, and I don't have the title anymore, Apocalypse Now. End Times and Ecocide. And I just want to talk briefly about I got a call. Let's take this caller before we go. Caller, you're live on the air with the Bro Diallo Show. State your name or alias and where you're calling from.
Hey, what's going on, brother? This is Dolfo.
Hey, what's up, man? Long time no hear.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
And then I see you got yourself suspended from Facebook, sharing hateful things.
Yeah, man. That's what they say. Talking about some hate speech.
Yeah, shame on you, man.
Yeah, man. But I was calling to say something about this Farrakhan nonsense, man. At a certain point, black people, man, we just gonna have to realize that Farrakhan is a class enemy. Just look at him recently. He aligned himself with Kanye West, Jim Brown, and now R. Kelly. Talking about some, these are my brothers, these are my friends, all this nonsense. Dr. John Henry Clark been telling us about this dude. Yeah. Been told us about this dude. He a faker and a fool and a fraud. So our people, they continue to rally around and get this dude passes. They was going off on the dude Mark Lamont Hill when the media claimed that he condemned them, but then when you clicked on the article, he didn't condemn them.
No.
But they were going in on Mark Lamont Hill, calling him a coon and all this other kind of stuff for Farrakhan. And I guess these people, they're not knowledgeable of history about what he said about Malcolm and all the things that he's done. He's steady sounding like Trump and all these speeches that these people be posting. So I wouldn't be surprised if Trump would invite him that he would go to the White House.
Oh, he'd so freaking go. He'd so go. And let me tell you this. I knew Farrakhan was the Teflon Don, that nothing could bring Farrakhan down when he went at Beyonce. And he said he wants to tell Jay-Z to check Beyonce, to cover her body up and stop gyrating on the stage like a harlot. I'm like, if he could go at Queen Bey and the black community don't dump him, because I've gotten dismissed and dejected for having the gall to say something critical about Beyonce. So forget all that killing Malcolm X, being a party, or as he confessed, creating the atmosphere that led to Malcolm's death. Forget getting with the right-wing fascist Reverend Sun Young Moon, taking millions of dollars from him to finance the Million Family March. Forget aligning with the Saudis and taking Saudi Wahhabist money to promote their ideas. Forget, I don't know, what's the next, what was the latest? R. Kelly.
L. Ron Hubbard.
Forget L. Ron Hubbard inside. Forget all of that. If Beyonce didn't bring this man down, he cannot be brought down.
Right.
If he could go at Beyonce's head and face no backlash from the black masses, then we're just, we're gonna be stuck with this man for as long as he want to be here.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, might as well get comfortable. But you're absolutely right. And I thought this was a Chicago phenomenon because Chicago, for some reason, loves not only inept but corrupt leaders. They have, they collect them like they're fine works of art. But this, I mean,
Right.
Farrakhan got international standing. When I was working with the
Okay.
Nation of Islam in Kansas City, and we had not the Nation of Islam, but I did work with the Nation because another a little known fact, individual ministers at various mosques can do positive things in the community. And a lot of times they go against the national headquarters here in Chicago. They don't get with that program. So there's mosques all
Right.
over America that ain't putting up pictures of L. Ron Hubbard and not forcing their members to go through auditing, the Scientology auditing. So I did work with the local mosque. I think it was Mosque 43 in Kansas City on Truth. But when I was working with the National Black United Front, and they invited Farrakhan, and Farrakhan came there to promote one of the marches, like his third or second march. I'm like, why? I'm not sure. I don't understand his appeal or his staying power.
Yeah, be that. And then, just to go back to the class thing, like this dude out here trying to make albums and all this kind of stuff with all of these minstrels, trying to steady get close to them. And this dude want to be a celebrity, and he wouldn't be able to live this lifestyle in this mansion in Hyde Park if it wasn't off the backs of the poor black masses. Nobody talk about this, but they want to talk about a non-profit industrial complex and how it's exploiting black pain and suffering. This dude exploits black pain and suffering.
That's his
So what are
currency.
y'all talking about?
Yeah. He packages and sell black folks to the highest bidder. He will rally around black people around causes that he's paid. Somebody said today that he was the black community's Donald Trump.
Yeah, Chris had posted that.
It was Chris. Shout out to Chris.
Yeah.
Shout out to Chris.
Yeah,
Because,
man.
I mean,
But I'm,
go on.
yep. But even on that point that you were raising about the police, I had me and another comrade, we had a meeting at the mayor's office here, and he called in the police chief or whatever. I don't understand why they do not understand what you were saying earlier about this is not a personal matter. This is an institutional critique of a particular institution that does evil, that is evil, that's exploitative, that's oppressive of black people and poor people. They always want to reduce it down to, oh, well, we different from other police departments across the country. And it's like the argument that you make, and it would be like you say, it's silly for us to say Democrats and Republicans are all the same. I think it would be equally silly to say the police department in Jackson, Mississippi is no different from Chicago, Illinois, or New York, or St. Louis, or Kansas City.
Right.
There are some differences, and it would be wise that we study those differences and point them out.
Right.
But they try to make the point that, oh, we out in the community, we shape. Because I raised the point to the dude. I'm like, why y'all study occupying the black community? Why do y'all study have these checkpoints? He talking about them. They not checkpoints. When you see us out there, we stopping cars and we shaking people's hands, asking them how they doing.
Oh.
I'm like, man, what kind of nonsense? Man, what's wrong?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. All right, and you saw that report, which was done. There was Disciplined Minds almost 20 years ago had said this already. But a lot of times people just repeat stuff like it's new or they came up with it. But it was studied that black cops are no less likely to assault, violate the human rights, or even kill black people than white cops.
Yeah, I saw that.
But then
I
again,
guess they just overlook that stuff. I guess it's convenient to overlook it because they always use this trope about violence, and then when you start critiquing them, like these right-wing racists on this blog that be trying to like take all of my posts off Facebook and post them, talking about I'm attacking victims of crime and all this old nonsense.
Right.
But they sit up there and say, well, I hope when something happens at his home that the police don't show up. Well, first of all, I hope I don't ever have to call them. I'm going to try my best not to. If I can deal with a situation, then I'm going to deal with it, because they always escalating something anyway
Right.
to something that it doesn't have to be. So I don't look forward to calling them.
Right.
But even if I did have to call them, y'all take my tax dollars, I have to pay it to y'all. Y'all better show up.
Right.
What are these, man? These people just ridiculous.
And not only do the police take your money and obligate and force you to be dependent, they remove your capacity for self-defense. And that's
Right,
what white people
right.
always, they create this artificial dependency, then they try to mock and lord the dependency over you. So you remove the
Right.
community's capacity for self-governance, remove the community's capacity for self-defense, remove the community's capacity for self-regulation, and then you come in and improperly regulate or give inadequate protection to the community, and then you want to look at people who say, well, you know, our protectors are also threatening us. Oh, well, you don't
Right.
you don't want to call the police? Well, if you hadn't driven half my community into poverty through racist economic policies, if you hadn't bled out the schools and all of the positive institutions, if you hadn't just spent the last century murdering and decapitating all of our progressive black institutions from the UNIA all the way up to the Black Panthers, I wouldn't need no goddamn police.
Right.
But you put me in a position where I need the police, and then you mock my resistance to the abuse of the police, and then you threaten me with denying me protection when you deny me the ability to protect myself. It really is a pathological sick cycle.
Right. Right.
So yes,
Yeah,
our
yeah.
dependency of the police, our need to have the police in our community to protect us from other black people is something we should resent, not something we should embrace and praise and show appreciation for. You
Right.
know, I build a nuclear plant right behind your house and your whole family gets cancer, and then you're supposed to bow down and thank me for giving you chemotherapy drugs?
Ridiculous.
You know, well, oh, you want to be mad? You want to be resentful of my chemotherapy? You know, yeah, I am.
Right.
So, but that's what happens when we don't have a holistic analysis.
Yeah, man. Well, I'll let you go.
It's good to hear from you, man. Do you have an alternative site, man? Because your regular doses of insights and analysis were very helpful to me. So what? I just gotta wait 30 days, or you got a
Nah,
Twitter or
man,
what?
you know, I'm on Tumblr too, so but
Okay.
I need to start running posting more regularly on there. But yeah, but I'm on Tumblr too. Adolfo MN.
All right. Yeah, I follow you there too, but you're gonna start posting there. Okay, you can find Bro Adolfo until he returns to Facebook, and hopefully, man, you'll work on that hatred in your heart, brother.
Yeah, I will.
You'll go to the Scientology. You go get one of those
Somebody
Scientology.
told me they was gonna pray for me. This white man said, "I'm gonna pray for you." I told him, "Don't pray for me, man."
Oh wow, yeah, you know how far you got to be gone to have white people telling you they got to pray for you. Well, listen,
Yeah.
work on that hate. Go to your local Scientology office and you can get an audit. They'll hook you up to these wires and they'll find, help you to or you can go to one of these Buddhist temples, realign your chakras, burn some sage, do the holy, go to the tabernacle, work on yourself, brother. Ain't no reason to be so hurtful. This is a day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be happy in it.
Happy in our oppression, just following, just be happy. And just for disclosure, I understand, like, being under indoctrination of somebody like Farrakhan, because I used to be in the NOI. And even now, when I raise critiques and I raise their point, dudes that was in there with me, they try to deny and say that I wasn't in it. They say I never was in it, that I'm lying about it. Because they know that I can expose them for the frauds and the hypocrites that they are, because I was close up in it. And I saw exactly what they were doing. But I was studying also, and it just wasn't adding up, like Malcolm was saying. It was just certain things, man. This is just hypocritical. This was backward, and I just couldn't go along with it. When you start to study and you start to try to get an understanding of things, you see things don't add up. And that's the thing why people, like you stressing, how people need to study. You don't need to be intellectually lazy.
Right. Absolutely. Yo, did you manage while you were there? Did you manage to get a vegan bean pie recipe? Real talk.
No, man, I
Damn.
didn't. Nah, I,
Then you
I got the
wasted your
recipe,
time.
but not vegan, man.
You wait. It was all your time there was wasted. And anybody else listen, anybody that could shoot me a vegan bean pie, I ain't had a bean pie in over 20 years, and I'm
Think they
suffering.
banned all of, it's a sister in Chicago. I know that sometime when Nina, my wife, when she was a student at the University of Chicago, it was a sister that used to make vegan bean pies, but they weren't as good as like the
Yeah,
rest
right.
of them.
Okay. Let me full disclosure. I did have a vegan bean pie, but it wasn't no damn bean pie. A lot of times people be like vegan. You know, you can't. I'm waiting for a real vegan bean pie, like the old school bean pie,
Right.
the creamy pie with the sugary crusty crust. Man,
Right.
like I said, your whole time there, the research, all the knowledge you got from the nation, I don't care, man. Get back in there and get us a vegan bean pie recipe. Get it out to the people. I'll find somebody else. I'll go find another bow tie. Where,
All right, bro.
all right, it's always good to hear from you, bro. Please don't be a stranger.
Definitely. No, I won't be. All right, bro.
All right, peace. All right, that's bro Adolfo. He got suspended on social media, and I'm following read his social media posts. And I find, to be honest with you, I never saw any hate speech there. Thank goodness Mark Zuckerberg was able to see the hate speech, because it by me, because it was always astute analysis. And there's a little passion there, but I've never been able to find hate speech in Adolfo's post. But that's why we have Facebook to protect us, because sometimes we're not smart enough to identify hate speech, and we're not disciplined enough to say, hey, I don't like what this person is saying, so let me just ignore or unfollow or block them. No, we got to go to a white daddy to protect us. So thank you, Mark Zuckerberg, for protecting me from my damn self, because you know better than me what's appropriate for me to read. Thank you. Corporate censorship is almost as good as government censorship. But I digress. The IPCC, the International Panel on Climate Change, which is an official body of scientists founded in 1998, in Geneva, Switzerland, the headquarters of the World Court and all these other international bodies, globalist and we're going to do a show on globalization and nationalism, since we have a president who is a self-proclaimed nationalist, who is anti-globalization, which he's an idiot, and then all these other idiots parroting his claims about globalization. But I digress. They stated that the planet has the world has 12 years to limit climate change and to avert utter catastrophe that could literally lead to the complete collapse of civilization. If the United States and the other first world nations cannot come together on an agreement of how to, number one, limit carbon emissions, but it's not enough to limit carbon emissions. They have to reverse carbon emissions, meaning that instead of emitting carbon, they have to begin to set up conditions where carbon can be extracted from the atmosphere, extracted from the oceans, and the greenhouse effect of global warming must be reversed. And there's less than 2 decades, only 12 years, to avert utter catastrophe. And if this catastrophe means that there will be droughts, massive floods, uncontrollable storms, extreme heat, ocean acidification, mass extinction, mass starvations due to crop failure, and a whole laundry list. And then you will also hit what they call positive feedback loops, meaning that the melt of the permafrost in Siberia and the North Pole will not only begin to leak methane, which is many times worse of a greenhouse gas than carbon. It will meet carbon monoxide. It will emit greenhouse gases, meaning that even if humanity not only stops emitting carbon into the atmosphere, but also begins to sequester carbon, as they say, there will be no going back because the earth itself will be an engine of global warming. The earth itself will begin to emit uh, greenhouse gases without human inputs. So it is a monstrous condition. And the Europeans, Western Europe, the EU, the United States, Australia, Canada, and the new guy to the club, China, are the drivers of climate change. And they're the only nations with the power, the infrastructure, and the economic power to reverse it. And not one of those nations, excluding maybe Germany, is making any real strides to avert catastrophe. Now, when Obama was in office, and I would see how he would govern and the policies he would advance, I would often say to myself, Obama is the father of two beautiful young women. Does he want them to live on a planet where they can thrive, where the air is breathable, where the water is drinkable, and the soil has the capacity to not only grow food on, but input nutrients into that food? A lot of times, Obama's policies will contradict anything I would see in terms of a father who has the interest of his children and his descendants being able to live. And not just Obama's perpetuation of Western imperialism, support of Western imperialism, but his support and facilitation of capitalist genocide. But now we have Trump, who is much worse than Obama. And Obama was bad as hell on the climate. How do you judge the success of any administration? It's a very simple thing. While you were president, every year that you were president, did carbon emissions go up or did they go down? You can say all the other stuff, EPA regulations and all of that, electric cars, all that BS. Every year that you were president, you were the chief executive. You were over the EPA. You were in a position to advance the post-carbon economy and post-carbon technologies. Did carbon emissions go up or did they go down? And every single year between 2008 and 2016, under Obama, carbon emissions went up. Therefore, he was a failure on the climate. And Trump is much worse, but if it wasn't for Obama's failures, you wouldn't have had Trump in the first damn place. So, what I wanted to think about is what's up with the minds of these people. You literally have white men, white scientists, white capitalists, white men in power who have the capacity to address this, to end this, to stop this, and they don't. What the hell is wrong with these people? What the hell is wrong with these people? So that's why I brought with me today my copy of the Iceman Inheritance, which is a anthropological study, Urugu, which is a psychological study, and then a lesser known book called Culture Matters. And Culture Matters is a compilation of books of white men, elite conservative white men, sharing their thoughts. And this is a book, it's been some time since I read it. Probably about 15 years since I read this book. But it talks about progress, how values shape human progress. This book basically talks about why some cultures succeed in this modern world and why other cultures are failing. And even though this is a right-wing conservative book, and it's edited by Lawrence Harrison and Samuel P. Huntington. And if you don't know who Samuel P. Huntington is, this Urugu, this no-good cracker, also wrote a book called The Class of Civilizations, which is another racist book. And this is a racist book. And it says nothing about the cultures that they're critiquing. It says everything about the white culture. Even though they're talking about the failed cultures, this says little to nothing of substance about the failed cultures. And it talks more about the pathology of the successful cultures. So yeah, sometimes I go get me some racist books in order to understand the psyche of racists. And so the what we're living under today, ecocide. And let me be clear. I need to say this every show. And if I don't say this in every show, I feel like I failed you. Right now, we are dealing with the destruction of the life-sustaining capacity of planet Earth. The life-sustaining capacity of the Earth is being destroyed, being subverted for short-term profits. That's what the issue is right now. And that issue is above any racial, gender, economic, political, social issue. The destruction of the life-sustaining capacity of the earth. These Urugus, these white people, I'm sorry to say, and yes, there are some good white people that got it together on this issue. You have Earth Liberation Front. You have groups of white people that go around trying to bust open pipelines. You have white people going around and trying to sabotage logging companies. You have white guerrillas, who are called eco-terrorists, who are doing everything they can to blow up the corporate capitalist earth-killing infrastructure. And there are many white people in prisons right now. I give credit where credit is due. If you just want to hear that white man is the devil rhetoric without any analysis, without any nuance, then go on to R. Kelly loving Farrakhan. You got Animal Liberation Front, who are fighting to upend one of the most damaging, highest carbon and methane emitting industries in the world is the meat industry. The meat industry is responsible for cutting down the rainforest. The meat industry is responsible for destroying the natural habitat throughout the world. It's starting with America. The reason there are hardly any polar bears, the reason there are hardly any grizzly bears, timber wolves, or any higher apex predators left in the United States is because the cattle ranchers killed all the apex predators because the apex predators were dipping into their profits. And you got Animal Liberation Front, Earth Liberation Front, Deep Green Resistance. So when I say white people, I'm talking about white elites and the white masses who love to drive their SUVs in their suburbs and watch wrestling and shop at Walmart. But I assume that the true progressive, the true radical, the true revolutionary whites don't get offended when I say white folks. Because even though it's not all white people, it is white culture. It is the white mentality. It is white philosophy. It is the white cultural assembly that is described in the seminal book Urugu by Dr. Marimba Aini, an African-centered critique of European cultural thought and behavior. European culture is more damaging than European technology, European weapons. In fact, it is European culture that gave birth to European weapons, culture, technology, imperialism. And if we don't understand and critique and subvert their culture, and like I said, there are white people, Derek Jensen, Susara Taylor, Baba Vakian. There are white people out there, even less radical ones, Tom Hartman, shout out, that are working on this, trying to fix their people. And they're not doing it to save black people. They're doing it to save their damn selves. But it starts all the way back to the Greeks. I don't see this because prior to the Greeks, if you look, white people, they had their own way of doing things, but they didn't have this depth of misogyny, sexism, imperialism. They were nomadic or static tribes. The Greeks were the first people, the roots of Western civilization. Even the Vikings, they would do raids and conquests. But they would come, rape some women, steal some stuff, and go home, take their asses home. They didn't establish beachheads and engage in this imperial conquest. They would do raids and along the coast. It was a nuisance. It was a nuisance. I'm not saying it was good, but it wasn't what we're dealing with today. The European culture mentality of today started with the Greeks. And we can critique pre-Greco-Roman European civilizations, but that's before they consolidated their pathologies into a culture. That's before Aristotle, Plato, Socrates. And Plato is the most important. If you don't read Plato, then you don't know nothing about white folks. But I can't get into this too deep because I done messed up my time. But let me say, one thing about European culture, they separate the abstract from the physical world. Most other cultures are what you call synthetic cultures or holistic cultures, meaning that they connect all things. They see all things as connected. Europeans are what has been called an analytic or lithic culture, meaning they break stuff up. They separate things. They think if I'm going to understand a molecule, if I'm going to understand an animal species, I have to take that animal species into a laboratory and dissect it, take it apart, and look at it separate from all other things. Whereas other cultures say, I can't understand the animal unless I know how it relates to all other animals, unless I see how it interacts and what role it plays in the whole thing. But in Western Platonic philosophy, the abstract, numbers, language, culture, art is separate from the physical world. That you can engage in abstract thinking. So I can sit in a boardroom and talk about profits and not think about the rainforest. And I can completely separate economic progress from ecological progress. I can have a wealthy economy and the stock market and the NASDAQ and the physical suffering, starvation, poverty of the nation is totally disconnected. And every day you hear the stock market hit a record high. The Dow Jones average is at an all-time high. The economy is good. And every day as you listening to this in your iPod, you're stepping over homeless people trying to get to your cubicle so you can do your wage slavery. The abstract is separate from the physical. And so when the moment that they started to, and the worst thing about Western culture is not just the genocidal, suicidal aspects of Western culture, but the fact that it is a metastatic culture. A metastasis is when you have a brain tumor that goes to the liver, where the cancer cells don't differentiate. They can exist in any system in the body. Because you have a benign tumor that stays put. If you have a benign tumor on your liver, you have a benign tumor on your lung, that tumor is going to stay in the lungs. But a metastatic tumor is like, to hell with the lungs. Let's check out what the stomach is doing. Let's get in the digestive system. Let's get to the central nervous system. So Western culture is a metastatic culture. It's not content just to say you can have Greece, Rome, Europe, have the best, everything Western culture has. They're not happy being there. They got to be in Africa. And not only do they come to Africa, they tell the African, you need currency. You need Christ. You need capitalism and democracy. Or you're not human. We'll kill you if you don't behave as we do, if you don't see the world as we do, if you don't define the world as we define it, if you don't have our social theory and our worldview, we will kill you. The metastatic culture. And so you go from this abstract, which is really deep. You know, it's really deep in reading and understanding the Platonic philosophy. But then there are other philosophers. And one of the most influential philosophers that white folks don't tell us about is Ayn Rand. And so she took Platonicism and modernized it. She took it from the Greek forums and dusty academic tomes and brought the essence of Platonic philosophy to the real modern world. Ayn Rand came up with this concept of objectivism. This concept that man is a complete thing unto himself. You know, these objectivists, like Trump is a militant objectivist. He's not a nationalist. These people believe that when I die, the world ends. The world started at my birth and it will end at my death. There is nothing before me and there will be nothing after me. And in the short time that I'm here, my pleasure is the tantamount only thing. My individual well-being and pleasure is the only thing that matters and the only thing that I'm obligated to fulfill. And I don't care if it's my wife. She exists for my pleasure, my mistress, my children. And the moment they stop being a pleasurable asset for me, I can do away with them and get a second wife and a third wife and a fourth wife. Just ask Trump if you don't believe me about their philosophy. Don't ask him nothing. He's going to lie to you, but just observe him. So Trump is doing everything in his power to further pollute the planet, to further rape the ecosystems. And you think he gives a damn about Barron and what kind of world Barron will inherit? And the only reason these rich, sick white men like Trump's father leave the money is because they want their name to live on. And that's a form of immortality for them. It is a very sick and dangerous mentality. And we sat around and let these monsters develop nuclear bombs. And so you have to understand Plutonicism. You have to understand objectivism. You have to have some working knowledge of Ayn Rand and libertarianism. And I'm not even talking about the pollutions and cutting the deforestation. I'm talking about the fundamental mentality behind the destruction of the earth. Because if we don't understand the fundamental mentality behind the destruction of the earth, if we don't understand the fundamental mentality behind the destruction of the earth, it doesn't matter how many reforms, how many electric cars Elon Musk spits out of his Tesla factories, no matter how many wind farms they build in southern Illinois. If we don't address this fundamental mentality, we're doomed. We have to encapsulate, we have to trap, we have to purge people who have this mentality. And it ain't just Europeans anymore. There are many Africans and Asians and natives and Pacific Islanders who are contaminated with this mentality. And there is no way of reforming it. It is a psychopathology where you look at everything as a commodity. You look at everything. Even there was a time where you would go around various cities and they put these notes on trees saying, oh, don't cut down this tree. This tree contributes $500 a month in oxygen. And they put a dollar value on oxygen emissions of plants. They put a dollar value. They go and see the great African elephant and say, don't shoot the elephant, because the elephants, people flying from around the world to see the elephants, brings to the Botswana economy $12 million a year to the Botswana economy. As if that's why you shouldn't kill the goddamn elephant. What the hell is wrong with these people? It's this subjectivism. It's the Platonic thought. Capitalism is not a natural system. It didn't create itself. People constructed the capitalist ideas and created the physical infrastructure to execute those ideas. Where did it come from? Michael Bradley in The Iceman's Inheritance tells us it came from temporal displacement and what he calls the Chronos complex. But the bottom line on page 21 in the second chapter, he states, this is a white man, a Canadian. You don't get, Canada is damn white. Eh? He said nuclear weapons, rampant technology, environmental pollution, and resource impoverishment are the results of an extreme Chronos complex. They belong to on the white man's doorstep. He said, we white people, we are human, but in the perspective of the entire human population, we are a pathology. We are abnormal, atypical man. And he says the Chronos complex was a lot here, but get the book. He said the Chronos complex one was that man applied territorial and social dominance behavior to a new dimension, time. Our attempts to inhabit the new dimension of time, to assert and defend it, demand a new psychological and cultural tool. So he's basically saying that for other cultures, time was not something you can inhabit or possess. Time was not something that was linear. Time was a cycle. that life and death and rebirth were all cyclical. So death was not seen as the end, but the part of an ongoing cycle. The Europeans took that loop and turned it into a line and developed this concept of progress, eternal progress. So for 200 million years, the highest technology on the planet Earth was an axe. A hand axe was probably the height of technology for millions of years. The furthest technology on planet Earth was a simple axe, and you would refine the axe. Sometimes it'd be a stone axe, and sometimes you would find a metal axe, but an axe. And we went from just 2,000 years from the axe to the internet and rocket ships and nuclear bombs. And he said what created that was this pathological thinking process of the Chronos complex of man inhabiting, mastering, controlling, and directing time through a linear course. Now, there's so much more to be said about this. Like I said, I have at least a dozen books in my personal library dealing with this and expanding on these this science. But the bottom line is, for y'all who don't want to go around talking about Chronos complex, temporal displacement, and temporal aggression and all that, you just want to know it's embedded in the culture. It's not something that could be reformed by laws. Banning plastic straws and recycling and composting. Do all of that. Now, don't get me wrong. But fundamentally, this is a cultural conflict. Remember, Europeans, before they even had the technology, they destroyed the ecosystems and the biodiversity of Europe. They cut the forest in Europe. Before they even reached the shores of Africa, Australia, or the New World in the Americas, they had already been engaging in this. They were already perfecting these tactics, even when they had their highest weapon was a cannon or a musket. So it's not the technology. It's not. There are some white people who engage in what they call primitivism, meaning they think we can save the world if we just go back to living like cavemen. I mean, even some of the more Derek Jensen says that we have to return to the Stone Age, and then he says all of us have to go because white folks can't create life-sustaining systems. We all have to go back to the Stone Age, even though Africans had advanced well into the Bronze Age, had high-level complexity in structures. Look at Egypt. Look at the Great Pyramids and the great structures and the huge multiplexes and cosmopolitan society. But they didn't kill off the rhino, the elephant, the giraffe, the Nile crocodile. They existed right alongside the apex predators. So Africans, Native Americans, like I was telling y'all about the great mound builders, the great Aztec, Inca civilizations. And these aren't just people living in huts. These aren't just nomads traveling around a raw land. These are civilizations. But the jaguar, the sloth, all of the apex predators and the other complex ecosystems existed right alongside complex human civilization, so it can be done. The only people that didn't do it were Europeans. You had all those magnificent Asian dynasties, and the panda bear was right there alongside it. But Europeans had this concept, even the progressive ones, if whitey can't do it, it can't be done. So you even have progressive and conscious white people that say, oh, we need to return to the Stone Age. Anything beyond the Stone Age and we'll kill the planet. No, that's you go back to the Stone Age. Let me go back to the Dogon. Let me go back to the Asante or the Zulu kingdoms. Africa can create human civilization, complex, advanced human civilization alongside preserved ecosystems. But what's also a big problem is, and why a lot of people won't fight ecocide, is because it's embedded in the end times prophecies of Catholicism, Protestantism, Muslim, and even Jewish philosophies. So they have this dominionist concept that man has dominion over the earth, over the animals, over women, and other lesser inferior races of men. And so the destruction of the earth being burned to a crisp through global warming, is consistent with their delusional religion. That's why you can't just fight politically. You can't just fight scientifically. You have to fight culturally. And one of the strongest cultural forces in most societies are their religion, their folklore, their delusions about God and existence and creation and the beginning, middle, and end of existence. So you can't be Christian and pro-environment. Not a good Christian. Maybe if you're a bad Christian, like I said, if you're one of those half-ass Christians, one of those punk-ass Christians who ignore parts of the Bible. Because the Christian dogma and Christian doctrine are directly culpable in destroying the life-sustaining capacity of the earth. Oh, this body is just a vessel. This planet is just a way station. I'm going on to glory. That's a pathological thought process. So we have to fight Christianity. We have to fight Islam. We have to fight Judaism if we want to not destroy the life-sustaining capacity of the earth. I didn't say reform. I didn't say wake up. I said fight. We need to reduce its, because the fundamental core philosophy, like politically, scientifically, you got Platonic philosophy and objectivism. Culturally, you have Judeo-Christian and Abrahamic religions. Go to the damn Bible. Genesis, verse 1, chapter 1, verse 26. Then God said, let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. And who the hell was God talking to? Oh, all those half-naked men angels? Let us make man in our image, according to our likeness, and let them rule over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the sky, and over the cattle, over all the earth, and over every creepy thing that creeps on earth. What the blood clot? What kind of sick mind would not only write this, but try to follow this and pass this on to their generations? First of all, if God gave the planet to Earth, why did God make it? So over 80% of the planet is uninhabitable by human beings. Even now with all the technologies, we haven't even explored 30% of the ocean. It's our planet. Most of the places we can't go without dying. You can't go to the tops of the mountains or the bottom of the ocean without dying. Why would you give me something? Hey, baby, I love you. I'm going to buy you a brand new car, but you can't sit in the front seat. You can't sit in the back seat. You can't get in the trunk. You can only sit on the hood, and you can't drive it. It'll drive you. That's stupid. That is stupid. But that is the core rot. That is the tumor. That is the cultural tumor. This concept that man has dominion over the earth, that man is somehow a superior being. As God is over us, we are to be over all living things of the earth. And even these twisted Christians have this concept now called creation care. Creation care, which means, oh, we're not going to pollute the planet we own. But they won't let go of the concept that they own the planet, that they have dominion over everything that creeps. That's creepy. They said that Adam, one of the first things Adam did, I think this is before he gave birth to Eve, was name all the animals and plants in existence. He did that over like the course of less than a week. So he just sat there, elephant, camel, dandelion. That's some sick. It's just sick. So my bottom line is, as we fight to preserve the life-sustaining capacity, as we fight, because life, man, is not the standard. It's a pretty unique and phenomenal thing. That's why I don't eat animals. Everything I can do to preserve all life, from insects to cows and pigs to my own life, to the life of everyone around me. I do everything because life is a wondrous phenomenon. I am in awe of life. And I don't need no goddamn God or no supernatural mumbo jumbo to appreciate the magnitude of life. And I think as a living being, my main obligation as a self-aware living being is to perpetuate life. Not to make money. And even if that means I will have to deprive myself of life in order to preserve the larger life cycle, then so be it. And they tell us we're born to make money, or we're born to worship God. We're born to die and go to heaven. Those sick philosophies are anti-life, are subversive to the planet's ability to sustain life. So I know a lot of times, even myself, I talk a lot about the scientific, about how many parts per million are in the atmosphere, about how many degrees of warming, and every degree, quarter, 1/10 of degree to warming, how many more catastrophes. And I will list the CDC statistics about the growth of tropic diseases. We focus a lot on the technical aspect of global warming and pollution and capitalism. We very seldom talk about the psychological or psychosocial or psychospiritual aspects of this, of the true roots of this. If you really understood Greco-Roman civilization, if you really understood the roots of Western culture, then you would have known a nuclear bomb and the utter destruction of the planet through pollution and destruction of ecosystem was inevitable. And the only thing we can do is wage worldwide unrelenting revolution. And it can't be tolerated. There is no sanctuary. You can't say, I'm going to go into my community and we're going to just be positive and loving amongst my community members. You can't go to Africa. A lot of black people talking slick. I'm moving back to the motherland. This destruction recognizes no borders. They didn't recognize the borders back then. They don't recognize them now. Nuclear fallout, global warming, ocean acidification, mass extinction recognizes no border. And maybe you're an objectivist. Well, I only care about my life and how well I can live in the time I have here. Then you're a subhuman. You're worse than a beast of the forest or jungle. You're subhuman. You have not made yourself worthy of the gift of existence. Our obligation, our fundamental purpose as living beings is to perpetuate life. So we have to identify the number one threat to life is not nuclear bombs, not war, not even global warming or carbon emissions. The number one threat to the planet is Western culture, the Western mentality, the Western self-perception. It all started here, and that's where we have to ultimately end it. So as we look at the scientific, technical aspects, we also have to look at the cultural and psychological and historical and even genetic, biochemical drives. As Derek Jensen said, where the death urge, the European, the white death urge, of this pathological adherence to market fundamentalism, this perverted notion of human progress. We have to fight. I don't care. Even white skinheads. I'm not joking. My wife showed me this article of white skinheads that are pro-nature. They're going to plant trees, trying to reforest, clean up pollution. They're like literally ecological vegan skinheads. Even the most ridiculous groups of people are figuring this out. They're like, yo, we got to save the planet. We can, create, the pure right race and purge America of all non-whites. But there will be no America if we don't have a freaking atmosphere. If the oceans start boiling. The basis of life on Earth is phytoplankton. The ocean is the source of life, of all life. And the oceans are getting it the worst. The coral reefs are doomed. The polar ice caps are melting. And all I'm saying is, I'm not saying stop working, stop fighting, stop struggling to do this study. I'm saying that your study and understanding needs to inform your actions. not to stop your actions or be a divergence from your actions. This is a cultural war. As Dale Jones taught us, 90% of all conflicts and warfare are cultural. And if you can't get at the culture, then you won't. Afghanistan has fought the most advanced military in the world to a standstill. The Taliban controls more territory in Afghanistan than they did before Bush illegally invaded the country. Because as backwards as it is, as much as I ain't with it, the culture of Afghanistan has not been contaminated by Western ideas and concepts. And I'm not with that 17th century backwards culture, but damn it, I understand what an asset it is. Mao said the only reason we had a political, economic, and military revolution is because we had a cultural revolution. So understand the psychology, the mentality. Start to look at, we have to start to understand what we're up against. Plutonicism, objectivism. Plato and Ayn Rand are probably the two most important thinkers and philosophers from the ancient European world to the modern world, that every African that intends to oppose any obstruction to Western agendas, any non-African that wants to take up a stance against Western ecocide and omnicide needs to know this and needs to look into this and apply these teachings to their strategies and tactics to oppose ecocide and omnicide. Because these end times are self-fulfilling prophecies. And we have to fight this battle on all fronts, including the ideological, academic, and cultural front, as well as the industrial, material, economic, and even military front. Recess is over. I just had a meeting and I'm trying to build up and advance and accelerate my work here with the African World Coalition. And it's a slow, painful process. And every day I feel that I'm not doing enough. I mean, as Dale Jones would always say, it ain't no joke, and it's never been a joke. This is war on every front. And we have to deal with our mental side. We have to overcome our intellectual laziness and the menticidal, anti-academic, anti-literacy culture that is. We have our little study group going, and we're trying to grow. And we're fighting on all fronts. That's all I can say. But look all the way. To be radical means to go to the root of something, to go to the germ seed, to go to the utter essence of a thing. So we have to be radical in this. We have to look at the fundamental mentality that created global warming and the systems and the industries that feed global warming. This is Bro Diallo, Q4 Radio, AM 1680. You can listen to on the iTunes apps, iTunes Radio, AM 1680. Right now it's 9:06 in Central Standard Time here in the city of Chirac, the state of Illinois. And I appreciate you listening. I'm finally just settling the dispute with my internet service provider. So Bro Diallo Kenyatta will be live again and updated again within the next week. I appreciate people who make contributions to the Patreon. That's definitely a great aid. Please share the show. Please go to the Facebook page, share the show, go to the YouTube page and subscribe. I can't even tell you to go to the website. The site is not up yet, but it will be up soon, and I'm trying to make sure we don't have this downage again. We're trying to revive the African World Coalition, but basically all of our websites have had issues. But I don't want to get into, conspiracies, but they'll be live again. But all of my websites have had issues, African World Coalition, and that came off. First, I was suspended off of Facebook, and then as soon as I came back from Facebook, I started having all these issues with my other sites. But whatever, man. I'm going to keep doing. And I appreciate your support. Continue to help share, get the word out. And if you're in a position to, please make a contribution, become a Patreon supporter to help expand this media network. Because without a media apparatus, you're not going to have any type of sustained struggle. And we got some it's 9:08 now. So I got some other things I want to share with you. some music, some insights, some words from the late great Dr. Amusa Barashango talking about European holidays. Again, this is kind of like tradition that I'm developing on the Bro Diallo show as we enter the holiday season of Halloween, Easter, not Easter, Halloween, Thanksgiving, and Christmas. Tis the holiday season, and New Year's. I like to share Shakamura Barashango and his research on the roots of European holidays. So we're going to have a short, or maybe not so short, musical interlude, and then we're going to hear some words from Dr. Shakamura Barashango. So stay tuned to the Bro Diallo Show, Q4 Radio, AM 1680, and this is Genera by Ani Kamosi. I'll be back shortly. Peace. We're going off live, but you can continue to listen via Q4 website. Oh, hold on. Damn. Sorry about that. Anyway, continue to listen. Q4, iTunes Radio, TuneIn app. But we're going off live, and I'll see y'all Monday. Monday will be the return of Monday Q&A with Bro Diallo. So Monday evening, for people who can't listen to the morning broadcast, I have evening broadcast on Facebook and YouTube called Monday Q&A, where you can call in with questions and insights, and it's a good time. So please tune in, and you can find all of this at Diallo Kenyatta on YouTube. Please go to the YouTube page and subscribe. Peace.